Just when I was out, they pulled me back in. Well, Steven Crowder just leaked the actual official insider video of Candace Owens being fired or terminated by Daily Wire. This kind of flies in the face of the narrative that they parted ways peacefully. Now, I don't know if this necessarily changes anything massive, but, well, I mean, there are some very interesting things in this video that we're going to look at. But I do know that people that love Candace are still going to love Candace. People that hate Daily Wire are still going to hate Daily Wire. But it is interesting, the idea that she left on the high horse, which it doesn't look like that, which would be Daily Wire, TPUSA, what's the other one out in California? All these agencies leaving on bad terms. What is that other one? The PragerU, Blexit. Somebody came out, and it seems like now there's a reverse op where everyone's coming out and speaking out against Candace. But this is interesting. Also, only 3 days left to order your 12 days of coffee, jam-packed. Remember, the 12 days of Christmas starts on Christmas. And we also have gift boxes with our premium real cacao cocoa, chocolate-covered espresso beans, peppermint bark, and our medium roast coffee, as well as a 100% pure Kona and peppermint bark shipped in a stocking, all 15% off. Promo code HOLIDAY15. The cutoff for your order is Tuesday. So if you have any last-minute gifts and you want to support the channel, head on over to coffeebrandcoffee.com and just click the Christmas gifts on the top. Let's look at this video Crowder just put out. I'm not going to play the whole 18 minutes, but let's see here.
Everybody.
This is the first time this has been on the internet, is from what I can source, and it appears to be authentic.
15 minutes ago, the Daily Wire terminated its relationship with Candace Owens. Candace has been an incredibly powerful voice for conservatives for years. Unfortunately, it's become more and more clear, and it's now unavoidably so, that Candace has moved in a direction that the Daily Wire simply cannot and will not support.
Obviously, she was openly feuding with Ben Shapiro at this time. I'm not surprised. Nobody was surprised, but it is interesting to see this.
Candace's shift has done enormous damage to our brand, damage that we've decided we just can't allow to continue. Mostly, but by no means all of this tarnishment to our brand stems from Candace's flirting with, winking at, and even directly engaging in content widely viewed as anti-Semitic, and from associating herself with well-known anti-Semites. The Daily Wire.
Now, of course, that term is way overused. You're allowed to criticize Israel. You're allowed to criticize Jewish people. It's just like, it's really the modern racism, but you'll see here.
Contrary to public opinion, is not owned by Jews. In fact, the majority of it is owned by Christians, myself included. And we know that anti-Semitism as a charge is, like the charge of racism, often made far too lightly by those who profiteer from such accusations, groups like the ADL or BLM. But that doesn't mean that racism and anti-Semitism don't exist. They obviously do, and they just as obviously have no place in our national discourse. Candace refusing to condemn Kanye West, for example, is not anti-Semitism.
Okay.
I said as much at the time, and I even encouraged Candace not to disinvite Ye from her greatest lie ever sold premiere after his "I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people" tweet a year and a half ago. I thought at that time that one remark, even a remark as plainly anti-Semitic and asinine as that, wasn't proof that Kanye himself was necessarily an anti-Semite.
I think the jury's still out on Kanye. I think he just has manic episodes and says crazy stuff. I don't really know, and even if I sat down with him, I don't know if I could even tell if he was telling the truth or not.
People say and do all kinds of dumb things all the time, and I didn't think that Candace should necessarily distance herself from her friend at that moment. Did I find it troubling that Candace continued to stand by Ye as the weeks went on and he continued what became maybe the biggest anti-Semitic meltdown in American public life? A meltdown by the end of which he had praised Hitler, announced a run for the presidency, and hired the most prominent apologist for anti-Semitism in the country, Nick Fuentes? Yes, I did. And I argued pretty passionately with Candace about that point at the time.
Okay.
But I still didn't think that her behavior rose to the point of parting ways.
Fair.
Fast forward a little more than a year later, however, and there's a lot more cause for concern.
So it seems like this was something that was brewing for a very long time, but also that perhaps, Candace was trying to work her way out which would not surprise me.
Here are just a few examples from just the last few weeks.
This was on originally filmed March 19th, 2024.
This appeared on the Fresh and Fit podcast, which itself spews anti-Semitism and talks about the JQ, which means the Jewish question, routinely. And Candace said nothing while the host played a cha-ching cash register sound at the mention of any Jew or Israel, including Ben Shapiro's wife.
Now, I don't think Candace should be, she doesn't have to white knight everywhere she goes. So I'm going to, I think this point's kind of weak.
We have a clip here of that for you.
He is very passionate about Israel. He's married to an Israeli. I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. Imagine Ben Shapiro sitting on a podcast that was known for spewing hate toward Black people, and then sitting idly by while the host made jokes, racist jokes about Candace's family.
Now, again, I don't think it's fair to demand her to be like blowing up these arguments and stuff like that to defend someone else. It's what I would expect out of a friend, but I don't necessarily think I would be that expecting of it of just some random employee in a large company. But I can see how that would lead to some hurt feelings.
You can't imagine it because it's unimaginable. It would just never happen. Only a few weeks before that, Candace lamented, quote, DC Jews, who she says are Marxists and monsters, and who, quote, want nothing more than political power and need to be weeded out.
Okay.
Then just last week, Candace liked a post on X from an account called Christ Gnosis, asking if a well-known rabbi is, quote, drunk on Christian blood again. Now, if you aren't aware, the idea that rabbis and Jews more broadly drink the blood of Christians is one of the oldest expressions of anti-Semitism. It even has its own name. It's called the blood libel. And it's been used to pit Christians against Jews since the Middle Ages. The blood libel has been used all throughout history to incite the hatred and murder of Jews. I don't claim to know what's in Candace's heart. What I know, as I've said, is that she has been flirting with, winking at, and even directly engaging in content that's widely viewed to be anti-Semitic, and even worse, known and unabashed anti-Semites seem to have taken a real liking to her.
Now, it's totally Daily Wire's prerogative to separate themselves from her as, as a business over this type of thing. Obviously, Shapiro's a big voice there. He's Jewish. This will confirm a lot of people's suspicions around Daily Wire and what motivates them. But I think it's more interesting in how he does, I believe, perfectly kind of break down the Candace Owens logic circle where, I'm just asking questions. That's crazy. You can't say I'm insinuating that, when she's, of course, very clearly insinuating it, just like she clearly insinuated that TPUSA was behind Charlie Kirk's assassination. She clearly implicated Erica Kirk's wife. And then whenever she was called out, she's like, that's crazy. I never said that.
They routinely celebrate her, invite her on their podcasts, like her X posts, and retweet them. And she frequently reciprocates. Candace has made something of a sport in these last months out of strongly implying negative things about Jews, only to then deny that she was ever actually talking about the Jews in the first place.
Now this is, I don't like Jeremy Boring. I've publicly spatted with him. I think he's elitist. I'm not a big fan of him. Maybe my opinion would change if I met him in real life. Maybe I'll meet him at AmFest. I don't know. But this is what Candace does. She writes something that clearly implies something, and then when called out, she's like, whoa, wait a minute. I never said that. It's expert level, but people who are being intellectually honest know exactly what the tactic is. Anybody who's had a crazy girlfriend also knows that tactic too.
Candace made no statement at all in the days after Hamas terrorists raped, murdered, and tortured over 1,000 Israeli civilians, mostly Jews.
She doesn't have to make a comment about that.
Americans. And then they took hundreds more hostage. But then on October 28th of 2023, while anti-Israel protests were raging in London, where Candace, I believe, was at the time, she reposted a video of the protests on X, commenting, quote, interesting thing happening here. People are not accepting the media narrative about what's happening in the Middle East, despite the insistent rhetoric from government officials. On November 3rd, she posted, quote, no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. There is no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state.
Okay.
There was only one country on earth being accused of genocide at the time. Anti-Semites on X took to it immediately. They cheered at what they rightly or wrongly interpreted as Candace smearing Israel. And Candace didn't rebuff their interpretation. But when Dave Rubin came to the exact same conclusion as the anti-Semites, only instead of cheering for Candace, found it vile and rebuked her, Candace quickly attacked, saying, quote, "What's amazing about this is that I didn't name any country in this tweet. I simply stated that genocide is wrong always. This is not a controversial stance. Interesting how you interpreted it." And then followed up with, quote, "In short, if the blanket statement that genocide is wrong upsets you in any way, then you need to check yourself. I said exactly what I meant, and I won't be backing down or apologizing or further clarifying this statement."
Okay.
Within 24 hours, Candace liked a post calling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal.
I just think, quite frankly, this is like high school level gaslighting tactics. Candace Owens is 100% in her right to criticize Israel. She's 100% right to think that Netanyahu is a war criminal. She's, it sounds like they got tired of her pretending, playing footsie and pretending that's not what she was doing.
Now let's be clear. You're free to disagree with Israel's conduct, and you're free to oppose the Netanyahu government. But the idea that Israel is committing genocide or that Netanyahu is a war criminal is just factually baseless.
I don't know about the war crime stuff.
Unfortunately, Candace routinely makes insinuations about Jews that both lovers of anti-Semitism and haters of anti-Semitism both agree is anti-Semitic. And in almost every one of these instances, Candace says nothing to the anti-Semites who cheer her and only pushes back against those who disapprove of her comments.
That part
On
is
February
true.
28th of this year, Candace, just asking questions, posted, quote, "Time to look into the history and profiteering of pornography." Her replies were immediately flooded with anti-Semites cheering her for the question and providing the answer that they interpreted her to mean, the Jews. Once again, Candace did nothing to disabuse the anti-Semites of their assumption. But
Again,
when Anthony Koch came to the exact same conclusion, Candace pushed back, saying, quote, "This is utterly insane. I tweeted that porn is harming men in our society, and this person has interpreted that as an attack on Jews. This is an example of clinical insanity. There is no other explanation."
the thing is, Candace does hide behind the overwhelming context is going on. And then I make a vague statement that I know will be interpreted a specific way. And then I'm like, well, I'm just just a pretty black lady. That's crazy. I wasn't implying anything. She was. The biggest crime Candace Owens ever committed is that she doesn't have the strength of her convictions. She implied it, but she never had the courage to outright say it. And that is cowardly. You could agree with her, and I'll even listen to your arguments for or against them, but at least own it.
But of course, there are other possible explanations. There are other numerous examples just like this, when the anti-Semites and anti-anti-Semites all agree that what you're saying is anti-Semitic. Perhaps, as a very well-paid professional and expert communicator, you might consider communicating more clearly.
No, but she was communicating purposely vaguely.
Hasn't. She's only doubled down. In the last few weeks, she stated or implied that DC Jews control American politics, that Hollywood Jews force certain black artists to create violent and filthy music, that a Jewish gang robbed and killed Michael Jackson, that a Jew killed Lee Harvey Oswald to keep us from finding out that the CIA killed JFK. All this while elevating Osama bin Laden and Muammar Gaddafi and defending Hitler's book burning and apologizing to Muslims on behalf of America for what she calls the brainwashing of Americans after 9/11 and alleged American war crimes overseas. None of which proves that Candace is an anti-Semite.
Okay.
I don't claim to know what Candace actually believes. When I've asked,
well, she's just pandering, right? She pandered during Brexit. She pandered when she was a leftist. Now she's pandering to this group. And now she reached the apex crossover with the Charlie Kirk assassination, and she's crushing it. There's no denying that. But there can be no denying now why Daily Wire did fire her. Now, they then point to a couple Nick Fuentes clips, this, that, and stuff, like impugning her by people who are cheering her on. Again, that's more weak. But he finishes with this, which I thought is more of it, more important.
She's not pursuing the future that we're pursuing. She's not appealing to the audience we're appealing to. She does not hold the values that we hold to. I gave her every benefit of the doubt. I gave her far more benefit of the doubt than I should have, and I'm done. Candace has violated the terms of her contract in myriad ways. She has a contractual obligation not to tarnish our brand, but she has. She has a contractual obligation not to do anything that a reasonable person might construe as anti-Semitic or to align her brand with anti-Semites, but she has. And by the way, it was her attorney who suggested that we put that clause in her contract in the first place after the Kanye mess. It wasn't our idea.
Uh-oh.
For all of those reasons and for many more, we're enforcing our rights under the contract to terminate. Now, I know that this will cause a lot of confusion and harm and pain for a lot of you in this room, especially for those of you who've worked really hard on Candace's content, or for those of you who, like me, have only ever seen her as one of the most talented and important voices in the country. And I'm sorry for that. I hope that we live to see Candace come back from this dark path that she's taken. Again, I see her as one of the most talented people in the country, and when she uses those talents in service of the good and the true and the beautiful, I don't believe that there is anyone better, maybe in all of the world, than she. That's not what she's doing today. I hope that she does it again. She won't be doing it at the Daily Wire.
Woo. Well, I mean, I think this plainly confirms basically what everybody on all sides knew. You know, she was tanking the Daily Wire brand in their opinion. They didn't want to be associated with her opinion, so they fired her. It's pretty simple. I think Candace Owens is wildly dishonest, and I think she's grifting off the hot moment, what's hot at the time. Just like when she was doing Blexit, just like when she was a leftist creating her doxing website, Social Autopsy. And if you understand that about Candace, then you can just consume her content and know that she's just forming to whatever is kind of the popular question of the day. But just as long as you don't actually believe she believes any of the stuff she says, because she just plainly doesn't. Interesting stuff. Interesting leak from Crowder. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm sure it will be interesting, and we'll talk to you again real soon.